Hi guys, welcome back to Kim's class. Today's lesson is going to focus on the how and why the word to often changes to the sound t or duh. Let's look at today's objectives. The first objective says, I know the difference between teacher talk, which is what you're hearing now, and street talk, which is what you hear when you go to work or anytime you're not in the classroom. The second objective says, I understand why the word to turns into t or duh and how to use it. Now remember that during the practice exercises, I'm going to be using example phrases and idioms from my lesson on air travel. Don't worry if you don't understand some of the idioms or slang I use. You can go watch that video later. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rules and how this all works. So let's look at the rules when it comes to how and why the word to changes to t or when the word to changes to duh. The word to is pronounced t if it is after an unvoiced consonant. We're going to talk about that voiced and unvoiced in a minute. Just remember that t follows an unvoiced consonant. But if it is after a voiced consonant, it's pronounced duh. So, to becomes t if it's after an unvoiced consonant, and to becomes duh if it's after a voiced consonant. So there's two things that you have to understand about voiced and unvoiced sounds. So the best way to show you whether a sound is voiced or unvoiced is to touch your voice box, which is right here. As I'm touching my voice box, there's times when it tickles or vibrates. That's a voiced sound. There's also times when it doesn't, and that would be an unvoiced sound. So when we look at certain letter sounds, you need to know whether they're voiced or unvoiced. The only way to figure that out is to touch your voice box. So for example, we're going to look at the letter sound T. T, t, t. I don't feel anything in my voice box. That means that T is an unvoiced sound. What about the letter K? K, k, k. I feel movement, but I don't feel a vibration. So the sound K is unvoiced. But what happens with the sound E? You try it. Say the sound E. Did you feel that? E. Now compare it to T. T, t, E. I bet you felt it the second time. What about the sound Y? Y, y, y. That is also a voiced sound. Let's try the K and the Y together. K, k, k. Unvoiced. Y, y. That's a voiced sound. Did you feel the difference? So it's important to understand what that voiced and unvoiced sound is. You can just do it when no one's looking. It'll be okay. Let's look at some examples of when that word to turns to t and when that word to changes to duh. Here I have some example sentences for you. So let's look at how it works. Now remember, if you see words that are underlined in green, it means that they're idioms. These idioms you can find more information about in my video called Idioms on Air Travel. If you don't understand what they mean right now, it's okay. So let's look at the first three sentences. These three sentences, we're going to use the word t for the word to. Remember, the reason why it's changing to t is because the consonant that comes before the word to is unvoiced. So for example, here's our word to. The consonant before it is a T. T, t, unvoiced. Here's the word to. The consonant before it is the sound k, 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 unvoiced. In the last sentence, the word before to is trip, and the sound is p, 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 which is unvoiced. So for all of these sentences, the word to is going to change to t. Let's look at the first sentence. Teacher talk sounds like, how much will it cost to fly first class? Doesn't sound like that out on the street. What you hear is, how much will it cost to fly first class? Cost to fly, teacher talk. Cost to fly, street talk. Here's another example. I don't like to need a barf bag, teacher talk. What you hear is, I don't like to need a barf bag. Like to need, teacher talk. Like to need, street talk. Here's the last example for t. We had a layover on our trip to Seattle, teacher talk. What you hear is, we had a layover on our trip to Seattle. Trip to Seattle, teacher talk. Trip to Seattle, street talk. Now we're going to look at when the word to changes to duh. So remember, that happens when the sound before the letter to is voiced. So here's our word to. Right before to, we have the sound a. It's voiced. Here's our word to. Right before the word to, we have the sound I. It's voiced. And on our last example, the word to, right before it, is the sound E. Voiced. So in all three of these examples, we're going to change the word to duh. Let's go ahead and try it. Teacher talk says, we had a layover on our way to Seattle. What you hear is, we had a layover on our way to Seattle. Way to Seattle, way to Seattle. Let's look at the second sentence. I don't try to need a barf bag, teacher talk. What you hear is, I don't try to need a barf bag. Try to need, teacher talk. Try to need, street talk. Let's look at the last example. How much will it be to fly first class? What you hear is, how much will it be to fly first class? Will it be to fly? 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 Did you notice that these sentences are similar? The only thing that's changed is the word I put before the word to, so that we could get a better idea. So in this one it says cost to fly, which is cost to fly. And here I put be to fly, be to fly. Cost to fly, be to fly. Has to do with that sound that comes before. Here we have like to need, and here we have try to need. like to need, try to need. And on the last one, we have way to Seattle and trip to Seattle. Trip to Seattle, way to Seattle. That is the difference between "ta" and "duh." I think you have it. But to be sure, let's go ahead and look at our objectives for this lesson and see how we did. So, do you know the difference between teacher talk and street talk? I think you do. Do you understand why the word "to" sometimes turns into "ta" or "duh"? And do you know how to use them? I think we've practiced that as well. So, that's the end of today's lesson. Thank you for coming to Kim's class and for letting me come on this journey with you to learn English. Goodbye for now. I hope I'll see you soon.